3, 2. All right, we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I've had the pleasure of chatting with our guest speaker several times over the past couple of years. So I know she's got a lot of beautiful information to share in the next hour. So, buckle in, get your notepads open. I usually try to invite you all to not multitask, but I know she's going to drop a lot of knowledge. So get ready to open a lot of tabs and take a lot of notes there. And before we get officially kicked off, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. So first off, if you're joining us live, thank you so much. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you're deciding to intentionally spend it with us. If you're rewatching this, thank you for rewatching this. I know that digital fatigue and video fatigue is real. So actually, Lorraine and I were just chit-chatting behind the scenes about, how folks are either deciding to show up virtually and participate and engage live and, use this opportunity to network or rewatch it and, share with their community. So again, if you're rewatching this, we still appreciate you sharing knowledge with us, and feel free to drop in the comments anything you'd like to share, or share this video with your colleagues, your friends, your peers. But if you're here live with us, we do want you to participate, and you can participate in a number of ways. You can turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. This is a safe digital space. I'm not afraid to kick people out if you're not being respectful of everyone's voices, and we believe in visibility here. So again, turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. If you would like to hop off mute to voice a question or a reflection, by all means, please do so. You'll have to raise your emoji hand to cue me that you'd like to be given that privilege to hop off mute, or you can write in the public chat, or you can message me privately letting me know that you'd like to hop off mute. Again, we want to hear from you, so I want to make sure if anyone courageously wants to share their voice, that you are being heard. Now, if you do hop off mute at any point, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And this is also a good moment to remind you all, if you signed up for this chat, be looking out for a rewatch email from us that will include the link to this video, as well as any links to resources that our guest speaker might bring up throughout the hour. And then again, you can share that with your friends, your colleagues, your community, and just continue to encourage each other to bring our best selves in this virtual space. So the last thing I'll say is that we'd love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store for you this year. That is just already flying by, actually. And if this is the first chat where you are joining us and I am moderating, I just want to say thank you for joining. My name is Mariella Marie, as I said in the beginning, originally from California. I currently live in Patagonia in Argentina. And I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence at home, at work, and at play. So I might try to bring some of my reflections to that note if anyone's interested in that topic. Again, feel free to use the chat box so that we can just further unpack how we can practice emotional intelligence in these new times, I'll say. And if anyone is interested in supporting the project that I'm working on, you can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. You can sign up for our newsletter, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. And actually, in just a few moments, I'm going to invite all of you who are joining live to drop your preferred ways of connecting in the chat box, that we can really use this opportunity to practice mindful networking and just, building our network with, emotional intelligence, I'll say, so that you all are here, obviously, because you want to figure out how to bring your authentic selves to the table when it comes to virtual space. Lorraine is going to, drop a lot of knowledge here, and you can connect with some of these people who are here live with us. So, I am giving the opportunity for you all to do that. So in just a few moments, I'll invite you to drop in the chat. So be looking out for that invitation in just a few moments. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Lorraine, who is calling from Northern California and San Francisco. Lorraine, let us know a little bit about yourself. And for those who have never joined a chat where you've been here before, let them know how you came to learn about Power to Fly and what you're excited to share with us today.
Sure. So hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you, Mariella, for that wonderful intro. So this is actually my third time at Power to Fly, so definitely a fan, clearly. I heard about Power to Fly. I somehow got on the mailing list, and they started sending me a lot of content, probably some of these chat and learns as well. And I just thought it was so useful. And so I, kept the subscription, and I think I got in touch with you through my work at Prezi, and then we joined forces, and now here I am for the third time. So it's been amazing, and thank you all for tuning in today. In terms of my background and why am I here today talking about meetings, I am the head of editorial at Prezi, which is a virtual presentation and collaboration solution being used by the majority of the Fortune 1000 to make their meetings better. Late last year, I had the privilege of recording a LinkedIn learning course called Virtual and Hybrid Meeting Essentials. And then I've been learning so much about this space. I actually have created a course called Engage Your Virtual Workforce. It's a cohort-based course. And of course, a huge piece of engaging your teams and ensuring that they don't get burned out is meetings. So a lot of meeting content and meeting expertise in my career right now.
Beautiful. So I know you're going to dive in, when you respond to these questions, you'll give us a little bit more background of your career journey and just, the exciting things that you're working on at Prezi, which I'm a huge fan of Prezi. And I know that you've got a beautiful, presentation for us just to kick off the Q&A. But before we go into our Q&A, please set the stage for us. Let us know some of the principal themes for today's conversation.
Sure, yeah. So yes, you have them up here. So we're going to be talking about how facilitators can encourage participation. I think a lot of us are in those meetings where you're asking a question, it's very silent on the other side, or people seem tuned out. So definitely want to address that there. How to use virtual to your advantage. Hybrid meetings are great. You can be in person, you can also be virtual, and there are a lot of tools out there that you can't actually use in person. So if you're using them virtually, it actually enhances the meeting experience. So there was a few questions around that as well. And then how to plan and prepare for your hybrid meeting. I think an issue with a lot of meetings is that people, they just show up and they just kind of go through the motions, but it really takes quite a bit of extra work if you want to do it well. But once you can do it well, the benefits, there are so many. You're more productive, you save time, you collaborate better. So excited to cover all of these topics here with you today.
Awesome. Great. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can just kick us off with the questions that folks have submitted previous to this conversation. Now, I just want to say that if you all see your question come up and you submitted this, just let us know that you're here so we can make sure that we've got your question covered. And in the meantime, if any new questions come to mind or any of your own tips and tricks that you want to share with our community today, please drop those in the chat box or just let me know that you'd like to hop off me and I'd love to give you the rights to do that. All right. So Lorraine, go ahead and kick us off here.
Yes. Okay. Well, these were some amazing questions. This was a great first one. So someone asked, what is a hybrid meeting? Great idea to get that the definition out of the way before we dive into this talk all about hybrid meetings. So a hybrid meeting is a meeting that is based around the physical location of the meeting attendees. So a hybrid meeting means that you have at least a group of participants who are all in the same place, and then they're talking to at least one person who is remote or virtual. So it's that combination where you have some people in person and then at least one person virtually.
And in your experience, is there anything that you'd like to highlight as you've seen people, navigate through the challenges and actually, develop a new skin, let's say, just because it's been such a different experience? Anything that you'd like to shout out, and maybe in your own personal experience that you have found as we've been shifting, through the pandemic and folks are figuring out how to come back after, being out of the office for a while. And I know that you might dive in a little deep later, but in your personal experience, is there anything you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, so I think we're all still figuring out hybrid. So if it is difficult or you're finding it challenging, that's normal. And I hope you're not feeling stressed out about it. But kudos to everyone who's here today who wants to learn how to do them better and how to do both virtual and hybrid better. And I think hybrid meetings are an interesting space because there is that desire for people to be in person and to see their coworkers face to face. But we do want to be inclusive, and we have to think differently about how the meetings are going to be done, especially if there are people and coworkers who are remote. So it is a balancing act, but I'll be sharing some tips to hopefully make that easier for all of you.
Great. Thank you for the transparency there, because yes, it has been challenging. And just in general, whenever we're confronted with a new space and how to practice inclusivity in that new space, I think that it all gives us an opportunity to learn something new, practice active listening, hopefully more, and just be able to share stories. And this is also just another reason why I love Prezi, because it's just another way to, elevate storytelling that I think can totally inject more inclusion, more equity, just getting different perspectives from different people. And we're all different learners. So whether it be a visual cue, or, a written cue or just a vocal cue, I think that you all do a great job with that. So again, thank you for that. All right, let's move on to the next question here.
Sure. So this is actually 3 questions. I'm not going to read each one, but basically they're all around the idea about how to get people more engaged in that topic of inclusivity. So I will answer these, and then if any of you are here and you want me to elaborate on any of the points, just please let me know. So for all of these, I found a theme through them. And I think the biggest tip I would give is that you need to ensure that you are making very clear what the rules of engagement are whenever you are facilitating a meeting. So rules of engagement are basically the actions that you want people to take during the call. So for example, do you want them to use the raise hand feature, which Mariella, you mentioned before for this call in particular, which is great. Do you want them to use a chat? I like to say if you have more than 4 people within the call, everyone should be using the hand raise feature because it can get kind of unwieldy with everyone unmuting and trying to jump in. And I also like to be really cognizant of letting people use the chat, or Prezi has this on-screen response feature, because not everyone feels comfortable unmuting, and especially if you're introverted, trying to find that right moment to jump in and not talk over someone else can be really difficult and quite overwhelming. So to address the code of conduct part of the question, I think that's a great idea that really relates to the rules of engagement. For remote work to work well, everyone needs to be on the same page, following the same processes. Otherwise, it's just hectic with everyone kind of doing whatever they want and there's no structure. And, for this last question here, I would really hope that the rules of engagement would address kind of that bully pit issue of someone constantly speaking out and making sure that everyone does have a chance to speak. If that person is still not following the rules of engagement, probably need a separate conversation with them privately. But hopefully those rules do provide some structure. And I like to state them at the beginning of each meeting just to make sure everyone's really clear, or even in the agenda that you send before, make sure it's included there so people know what sort of behaviors are expected during that call.
Absolutely. And we've got someone writing in the chat. I think that it rings true to this kind of code of conduct that you are inviting folks to set up just to make people feel comfortable and confident. And Nicole writes, my company is still working remotely for the most part. And since the pandemic has created this, quote, no camera culture for virtual meetings. This goes for small to large meetings. Very rarely does a speaker or meeting leader put their camera on. I think that this has had a negative effect on a lot of people and the culture. Do you have any tips for how to deal with this? And also Nicole mentions, I turn my camera on when I'm leading a meeting, but then I fall back into the no camera most of the time.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think someone else actually asked that. So I have another slide on that later, but yeah, that's a great question. That is a challenge because you need the camera to be on to be able to feel connected with each other, to see each other's face, facial expressions, body language, eye contact, like that all makes such a difference in connecting with each other. So, what I recommend is to be very explicit at the start of a call. Like Mariella did, I would like you to turn your camera on because of this, this, and this. It has these benefits. It helps me as a speaker gauge if, what I'm saying is interesting to you, are you confused? And so providing those very clear benefits there. I think it's great that you're turning on your camera as a facilitator, just to set an example. I've had video calls where people have turned their video off, but I just keep my video on because they're going to feel more connected to me and like they know me with my camera on. So it's tough. It's definitely tough. But I think if you can start using, like, for example, Prezi Video or other virtual tools out there, it adds a little something extra to the call. So if you can bring kind of that little added benefit there, hopefully that things like that can inspire people to keep their camera on and to engage more frequently.
I totally agree. And thank you for calling out. I love, again, like I said, I love speaking about emotional intelligence. And I think that nice invitation in the beginning, paired with not shaming anyone who doesn't want to, because, things are hard. People are going through a lot of things. So we don't want anyone to feel, shameful for not turning their computer on. But I think that extended invitation in the beginning and listing the benefits, right? It's like, all right, visibility is key. We know that a lot of shady stuff is going on in the world. So the more that you can, practice visibility and inclusivity, with us, just kind of adds more fuel to the positive side of things, and just stating that from the beginning. I would also love to know if anyone on the call has any other tips or tricks that they have found helpful based on their lived experience. I've also heard of people saying like, okay, this is like, we're going old school. This is like phone call, no video, and that kind of lessening, putting the pressure down so that people don't have to like guess, do I need to be ready for the camera or not? What will people think of me if I turn my camera on? So kind of having those set times, no cameras, no cameras allowed kind of thing. We're doing this, really under the table here. But yeah, I would love to hear from you all. Actually, Summer just wrote here, I typically turn mine off if it is a larger meeting or if it's being recorded because I don't want to be distracting to others. Thank you for adding that, Summer. Amy writes, I feel like showing up in the robe as an example, like today, makes me look like for potential employers, who is this gal with no makeup and pajamas kind of thing. But at the same time, since this is an information video, I'm thinking I will turn it on. Anyway, yes, be yourself, turn your cameras on. Definitely there are moments of, if you're doing a job interview, unless it's a super lax company. I think actually, Lorraine, we talked about, there was a question in our last chat where someone said, what do we start to wear when we come back to work and we start to work hybrid?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good memory.
So yes, robes are optional depending on the situation, I would say. So we have Lice that wrote, some people are asked to keep camera off after saying hi or to keep camera closed when a panel or large size meeting for Wi-Fi stability. Marie writes, I'd recommend emailing ahead of time with the expectation, maybe start with a specific one like a weekly small team meeting. Yeah, great. So do you want to comment on any of these reflections here, Lorraine?
Yeah, I think they're all very, very legitimate suggestions or situations. I will say that there is a place for phone calls sometimes. I think, if you're meeting someone new or you are doing a big presentation, then I like to recommend camera on. But if it's a one-on-one with your direct report, for example, and you already know each other very well, like that's okay. Like sometimes it's tiring to be on video. So you just have to find the balance, and just like you said, Marielle, it's dependent on the situation and kind of what you're trying to get across.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So thank you for summarizing these 3 thoughtful questions together in your reflection. Let's move on to the next.
Yes. Okay. So as someone who is usually more of a participant rather than a leader for meetings, how can I be helpful in this effort? That is a great question. And I would say that participants are also really key to ensuring a meeting success. It's not just all dependent on the facilitator. So one thing I like to recommend is that for certain meetings, use a meeting MC. So that's someone who's going to be supporting the facilitator. So the MC can take notes. They can make sure that you're keeping on schedule and on track with your agenda items. They can monitor the chat, for example. The facilitator is there to ask the right questions and get the conversation going, but it can be overwhelming, looking at the cameras and raise hands and the chat. So having someone there to support you can help. So if you can volunteer and be that person, I'm sure, the meeting facilitator will be very thankful and the meeting will run more smoothly as well. And I also think there's value in chiming in ahead of the meeting. So I've actually had multiple meetings recently. I get added to my calendar and there's no agenda and it's really not specific. And so what I do is I ask for the agenda. I say, can you actually, break this down with timestamps so I know how much time we're going to be talking about each thing? What async work can we do ahead of time to make sure that this meeting is really productive? So I think as a participant, you're getting invited to the meeting and you want to make sure that your time is protected. So pushing back a little bit sometimes and just making sure that the meeting is going to be structured and that it's been thought through versus just thrown on your calendar, I think is huge and a great way that you can contribute as a participant.
Absolutely. And actually, can I just add like a little more icing to the cake on your initial response there? I think if you are like volunteering to help MC, it's a great way to network, right? And maybe make some more one-on-one connections. So, and then, obviously show that advocacy for whoever the guest speaker or lead speaker is. And that is practicing empathy as well. It's like, if you were in the other person's shoes, wouldn't you like for someone to help you navigate that space? And especially with Zoom, for example, sometimes there are different features that happen and things change and all of a sudden everyone can hop off mute when that wasn't, the norm before with different updates. So having someone there to support, any technical issues or, any, last minute questions that seem to come up and maybe, maybe they're on they're really on one or riding a wave. And for example, Amy here has popped her hand up, and I love just that invitation for the emoji hand raise, as you flagged in the initial conversation. It's something that I never started with, but I saw that, especially for large groups, and for people who don't necessarily call themselves extroverts and want to just hop off whenever, that emoji hand really is helpful here. So actually, this is a great segue. Amy, go ahead and let me give you the right to hop off mute there, and you can voice your question.
Hi, everybody. I'm not shy, but I'm also one that really tries to, start to learn this process of being online. So I wanted to say thank you, guys. I've been on a lot of meetings. I am really enjoying the positive energy that Power to Fly has created. So, I am in a group. It's a social group, and we have a chat Wednesdays where there's no theme to get to know each other. And it's so problematic. It's not about books. It's not about movies. It's not about vacations. And I feel that when people have no agenda, it goes off the rails. So I just wanted to practice using my hand raising. And I wanted to chime in to say, I think an agenda, particularly for work, is really important.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Like I think a lot of us were in those virtual happy hours, right, when the pandemic first started. And the first few, you maybe didn't need an agenda because it's a new thing, you're all catching up. But after a while, even when it's a social meeting, you need some sort of guidance. Otherwise, people are just sitting there awkwardly. Do they raise their hand? Everyone's talking over each other. So yes, definitely a theme or a game, a quiz. I totally agree with you, Amy. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you for sharing. And you just got some emoji praise there as well. It's also another way to be engaged during meetings. So thank you all for helping us spread the message of participation being key, and also setting people up for success. So we had someone write in the chat box that with an agenda, time blocking suggestions, that's really helpful. So thank you, Lorraine, for adding that to your response. All right, so let's move on to the next question.
Sure. As an organizer, a little bit related to the other question, as an organizer, how can I make sure attendees are paying attention to the meeting when we don't require attendees to stay on camera? So, first I would recommend the camera tips that we talked about before, but I think there are other elements that you can bring into the call to make sure people are engaged, and you're going to want to bring these in because you don't want people tuning out, and you'll have no idea if they are because you can't see them. So there are tools out there like Slido or Poly, and those allow you to get real-time engagement through quizzes and polls, and you can actually see results in real time. And so that's a really good way to interact and just make sure that people are actually participating, because you can see the numbers there. So using tools like that to get that real-time engagement is really helpful. One other thing that I would do here is to make sure that you're focusing on state changes. So you're not going to want to have the same person talking throughout the whole meeting, and meetings should never be like that anyway, but change things up. So play a video, have someone else speak. You just want to be ping-ponging around and basically changing the state of things so that it kind of triggers people to wake up a little bit and gets them out of autopilot.
I love that. I think I mentioned to you before in our last conversation as well, I love a good dance break or a movement break, something to encourage people to rehydrate, move around, maybe go look at the sky for a little bit. Just because it's so easy to just stay in this square for hours and hours and hours. And then we realize, okay, well, how did I reach burnout? Why is my head hurting? How come Exactly. There's so many different factors. So I love that you are, inviting folks to add, some flavor essentially to the meeting, so that you don't just have one person speaking, and that there isn't, maybe you have to talk about, some really, I would even argue, even if you have to talk about something that's really chewy and maybe, can be potentially, potentially create conflict. Of course, hopefully you're engaging conflict resolution and, big tools to help navigate through DEI spaces. But I think that, music breaks, dance breaks, adding some visual cues and maybe polling the audience as well. So you can check in, how are you feeling emotionally? Historically speaking, we are not asked, and if you are asking this of your employees, let's try to get with the times now, but please don't ask people to check everything at the door. Please do that nice, friendly check-in. How are you feeling today? what have you been listening to lately, just to not just dive in headfirst with all of the, data and numbers. And so you can start to make more relationships happen and meaningful relationships happen. All right, that's my spiel.
Yeah. I just chime in when you mentioned the music. The way you start off the meeting is also really critical to how engaged people are going to be. So I haven't started this yet, but I do want to try playing music at the start. And, one idea I have for my team is I'm going to make a playlist. Everyone adds their pump up music. And then each week for the team meetings, play a minute or so. And then maybe people can share, why they chose that song. But bringing something different to the start of the meeting besides, everyone just sitting there silently, that's not going to bode well for the rest of the meeting. So anytime you can add something different, like that bump of energy, it helps a lot.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm just going to flag some things happening in the chat box. So Mentimeter is a good tool to use for participation. Nice. Great. If anyone else has any, tools or tips and tricks, please drop those in the chat box. We have William here who says, I wish I had this energy in my meetings. LOL. Talking with intelligence analysis is extremely monotone. Sorry, Intel people. Structure is strict. And that was a tongue twister. Yes, I would say especially for folks that you think are, who need just a little extra encouragement to open up a little bit. I think that they would actually really appreciate that, especially so that they're not seen as that kind of person. Yeah. And because their work is so important as well, like maybe they're on the back end and doing all this, deep diving into numbers and data, but they're people too. And so, music is a nice piece of, it's just a nice way to glue everyone together. It's like we might be doing different things, but we're more alike than we are different.
Yeah, I like that.
We've got more folks writing the playlist. Tony Robbins' playlists on Spotify are really upbeat and so fun. Yeah, playlists are great as well. And even if maybe people don't want to put it into the meeting, but I would even say take 2 minutes before the meeting starts and pump yourself up with your music playlist or your break. All right, I'm done with my rant, but I just wanted people to, try to inject some emotional intelligence through art into their meetings.
Yes, I love all the recommendations. I definitely want to check those out after this call.
All right, let's move on to the next question, Lorraine.
All right, so this is another combo. Okay, so question is basically around, how to foster interactivity, some tools. One person here has a virtual staff retreat coming up and they want to make sure that things are engaging. They use tools like Menti or Whiteboard, but what else can they be using? So I found I have a few favorite tools that work really well. So Figma is one that is really great at laying out designs and getting people to comment and be able to follow along very easily. It's essentially a huge canvas that you can scroll through. And we actually did a hackathon at Prezi last week, and we used Figma to design a new onboarding flow. And it was just really helpful to be able to see it all like this. You just scroll along. You can add Post-its. And so we had brainstorming sessions where we take 5 minutes for each section of the flow and just write our feedback about what we would change or what we would want included. So Figma is really wonderful for that. Slido, like I mentioned earlier, great for getting questions from the audience, and you can actually allow people to upvote or downvote questions. So you can get a feel, for what people want to know about. And even if someone can't come up with a question or doesn't have a question, sometimes, seeing the other questions that are there and being able to upvote or downvote does get them more involved than they might otherwise be. And then I would say Prezi Video, of course, as working at Prezi, is on my list as well. Just having this sort of visual content on your screen, not having your face shrink really small. There's a lot of fun things you can do with this here. So that's another way to just keep people engaged and up level the video calls that you're having.
Great advice. We've got some questions in the chat about the links to the resources that you mentioned. I just want to let everyone know, if you signed up for this chat, I'm going to remind you all, you will be getting a rewatch email with links to resources that Lorraine might be bringing up throughout this chat. So definitely be looking out for that. Otherwise, instead of asking Lorraine to type those in the chat, I'm just going to ask you to repeat them out loud again so that folks can make a mental note. So we have, can you add these names and links in the chat, please? So instead of adding the links, can you just name these resources again?
Yeah, so Figma, Figma, that's the design one. And then Slido, Slido. And then Prezi, Prezi. And yes, I will send the links as well in the follow-up email.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I just want to also ask our live participants here, what do you all think about doing live polling during virtual events or during, hybrid meetings where some people have to be virtual? Do you find those to be helpful or annoying? Or just like a transparent answer here. I see some folks doing some thumbs up and some confetti. So let us know what you think. All right, got a couple thumbs up. So it looks like in general, people like the polling feature.
Nice.
All right. That's good to know. Yeah, I would like to see, because it's different to be working, on the other end, like thinking everyone's gonna love this. So then,
sure, yeah.
All right. So someone says this is a great response. I feel like everything's situational. Thank you, William. Of course, everything is situational. Narika writes, could be a good icebreaker in the beginning. Franca writes, love polls. Yvonne writes, polls are good. All right, cool. Thank you all for that feedback.
Positive. Yeah. And Marielle, I like what you did just now asking about the polls. Before you go to your offsite, come up with a few ideas, ask people what they would find interesting. And that way they're going to feel more invested because they're actually giving you some suggestions and ideas, and you're just making it more collaborative.
So I'm going to ask you a question about, so let's say that you are either working on the HR team or a people's team, or maybe not, maybe you're just a really, dedicated manager, and you see that time and time again. There's this one person or one or two people that never respond, even with the vocal questions or the polling questions or just responding with emojis. They don't turn their cameras on. What's a good way to handle that situation, just to make sure that, one, they feel included, and two, they are respecting everyone's time by being present?
That's a great question. I think talking to those people and trying to understand why they're not participating, because maybe they're really introverted and they just really feel uncomfortable speaking up, or maybe there's something happening at home and they're just a little bit disengaged from work, which is okay, like things happen. But if they don't share that with you, you're just going to think they're not committed, or that they're not engaged in doing their work. So I think having those really open conversations and just trying to be empathetic and understanding what the reason for that is going to be really important. Of course, if they're like, I'm just not into the work, like that's another red flag that you have to deal with. But overall, I like to just, assume best intentions, talk to them, be open and honest, and just see what's going on with them.
Great. Empathy is something you highlighted there that I want to just echo. Empathy is key in that situation. This is so hard to, when you have a screen in front of you, it's already hard to try to figure out how to bring your authentic self. And then when you have the team split, in a hybrid model, how do you make sure that no one's being left behind? And how do you make sure that, I think in one of our last conversations, you were saying like, over communicating is even actually better sometimes than just thinking everyone is getting it on the first try. So
yes, exactly. You have such a good memory, Marielle.
Well, I told you I love your perspective and your reflections on just how to engage the meetings, whether they be virtual or hybrid. So they have stuck with me. I'm a good student. All right, here I just also want to flag that Reba says it depends. As far as polling is concerned, it depends. Just don't overuse them so it doesn't become distracting or annoying. And yes, of course, I agree.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the next question.
Oh, actually, I forgot about this. I wanted to show this really quickly. This is an example of Prezi's on-screen responses. So you can see this is people engaging in real time. They can type text, they can include stickers, images, GIFs. So this is, I love this, especially for, introverted personalities, to be able to contribute in a way beyond the, the Zoom default emojis. So this is just a great feature, new-ish, but would just recommend you all to check it out if you have a lot of introverts on your team, or just it's another way to just have people participate without interrupting each other. So I just wanted to call that out.
Can you play that again? Because thank you. I want to see it again. I just love the way that you all just continue to upgrade and modify. I know that you said this isn't a new feature, but even though I'm not there, I'm watching this, obviously. These folks are supposedly have done a meeting already, but I still feel like I can be engaged rewatching this. So I can imagine when you're actually there, that it does spark more engagement. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Next question. Do you have any tips on how to make the flow of the meeting short, concise, and impactful while sticking to the agenda at hand? What's the best time length for a meeting to optimize productivity? So I get asked about meeting length all the time. The first thing I would say is the shorter the better, because if you schedule the 1 hour long meeting, magically the content is just going to take up all that time. So try to just guesstimate what the shortest meeting you can have and be able to get everything done. And I would recommend going with that first. One thing I recommend when you are building agendas, and that's great that you already know that agendas should be in the meeting, is to be as precise as you can. So I think what I've seen is that a lot of people write out agendas, they list a few items, which is great. You're already a step ahead of a lot of people. But I think really where you want to just add more emphasis is on the timing of it all. And that's going to be what helps you keep on track and make sure that people stay focused. So I get really specific in my agendas. It's 9 a.m. to 9:05 a.m., like introductions, 9:05 to 9:15, address X problem or brainstorm X topic, or share any challenges, things like that. So I think that's very critical in order to make sure that your meeting is actually staying on time and staying on topic. And I think the other thing I'd call out with agendas is just to make sure that you always have a goal. So I had a coworker, I used to work at LinkedIn, and she would say at the start of every call, this meeting will be a success if, fill in the blank. And so we always knew right when we got into the meeting, okay, we need to solve for this, or we need to have a solution for this by the end of it. You don't have to, use that exact wording, but I think, in the agenda, when you send it out ahead of time, have that goal. What are you trying to achieve? Sometimes you'll realize that maybe, based on the goal you have, you can actually just communicate over Slack or do it async, and you maybe don't need the live meeting. So just goals, and then also being really specific for timing with the agenda.
Timing is the big question in general, in life in general. It's like, how do we maximize our time?
Yeah.
How do we manage our time? How do we avoid burnout? How do we make sure everyone's voice is being heard? So this is just another layer to that complicated cake of how to manage the meeting times. And I love that you are, strategically breaking it down. As some of you who have joined these chats before, I love to give a 10-minute window for folks to know, okay, if you haven't spoken yet, or even if you're the guest speaker, if there's something that you didn't have a chance to touch on, everyone knows they've got 10 minutes left to shine. And I think that that's like another just like friendly reminder that we want to hear from you, and we want to make sure that, the meeting doesn't end before you have something important to share. So I love that you're flagging that. We have a question here. What do you think of breakout rooms? And just to tie this into our question about time, what's a good way to manage breakout rooms so that they don't like bleed into, the time of the group meeting?
I think it depends what the breakout room is for. So I don't know if whoever asked that question, if they can add more information, but what I would say is the breakout room should also have a very specific agenda or specific questions that you're trying to answer. Make sure people know how much time they have in the breakout room. I've been in ones where all of a sudden you have 1 minute left and you're like, wait, I'm only halfway through what we're supposed to be talking about. So yes, having, I think, thought starter questions or specific questions that you want the team to answer together is going to be really helpful and just make the breakout rooms more valuable. I think they're a good idea, especially, again, introverted personalities, a smaller group setting to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate. I guess one other thing actually with breakout rooms that I would think about, depending on what you're using them for, is it'll be good to have an assigned facilitator to each room just to keep everything on track. That's another good option there.
And if you don't have a dedicated facilitator, maybe rotating that role so that folks who maybe normally don't, aren't, let's call it courageous enough, or don't have the energy or time or, desire to speak, they eventually will have to hold the mic at some point. And that can just be a good way for that personal connection to happen. So people can hear, your perspective of how would you lead an icebreaker, for example, or what music would you put during this icebreaker moment? So yes, and I would love to know from our live audience, do you all like breakout rooms? Just, you can respond with emoji, either emoji praise or thumbs down. We can see if you all like breakout rooms or you dislike breakout rooms. All right, we got a couple thumbs up here. We got a couple thumbs up. All right, cool. Thank you all for that. Someone says I've never used them. Franca says she hates them. They hate them. Yes, I think when they first came on the scene, a lot of people were like, oh, let's use them. And I think that if it wasn't presented in a way that was, that had the intention of building community and just making things interesting, it's easy to just be turned off.
They need structure too. And I just thought of something else. if you don't have a facilitator, the breakout rooms need rules of engagement as well, or a code of conduct. I think, let's see, I did a workshop where they said the person with the longest first name goes first, and then you just rotate, by order, or maybe you popcorn to the next person. And that way you're making sure, again, it's like, it's still moving and you're not just kind of sitting there like, okay, who's taking charge here? Who's speaking first?
Absolutely. We got folks who are also echoing this, that, they do need structure.
Yeah.
Some folks say they aren't big fans of breakout rooms. Some people are saying, yes, great for engagement. We use them on large all staff meetings. So great. And, maybe if you don't like them, maybe there's a way to try to figure out how to make it work and just make it more interesting. It would be interesting to hear like that perspective instead of just tossing it in the trash. Let's see how we can make it better.
Yeah.
All right, so got some more questions here, or just responses, going back to whether we turn cameras on or off and just being mindful of different situations. So Yvonne writes, some of my team members are helping their children with virtual schooling since some schools are closed and don't turn on their camera. We understand and many times turn our cameras off too. Would you like to respond to that, Lorraine?
Well, I assume they're turning their cameras off just to show support. I think that's really great. You're being understanding. Again, we all have lives outside of work. So if that's the way that your team decides to show support for one another, yeah, I'm all for it.
Awesome. So I've got a private question here that is pretty lengthy, but it speaks to essentially, if you are normally like the first person to speak, or maybe if most people aren't speaking, how to make sure that you aren't, when you're training to be a teacher, you have to try to be mindful of too much talking time. I think it's called I don't remember the acronym, but it's basically making sure that your students have, if not equal, more time to speak. And so basically this question reads, how to make sure that you aren't always the one speaking up when maybe other people aren't, as courageous enough or confident enough to speak up during the meeting.
And do you think that's from the perspective of like you're the facilitator or you're the presenter, or it's just you're a participant and you're just speaking up a lot?
This is from the perspective of the participant who normally finds themselves, being the most outspoken when they aren't necessarily the speaker.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I would say is, if you can develop relationships with the people who aren't as vocal, I think that's just a really great trait to have as a leader. And what I like to do is, once you get to that familiarity level, to ask them, like, maybe they do want to speak, but they're just uncomfortable. So if you can kind of be that that meeting buddy of theirs who says, oh, I know, blah, blah, blah wants to talk about this topic, and just help them, give them that space to speak up. Like, I think that's a really wonderful thing that people can do, especially if they're more comfortable speaking up more often. And then I think, again, as much as you can kind of encourage the chat, encourage other ways of engagement, and just as the leader of the group, as a facilitator, to also just constantly repeat it, and then also contribute in those ways as well. Like, I in group meetings like to use the chat a lot, just to show that it's okay to use the chat. You don't have to speak up all the time. So to lead by example in that way, I think also works very well.
Absolutely. And for that person, I would say maybe you are the perfect volunteer to help the facilitator or help the leader in that moment, since you are more outspoken than the rest of the group. All right, Amy, I see that you have your hand raised. Let me just give you permission to hop off mute. Go for it.
So I am the one who asked that question, and it was lengthy. What I was really asking is, in my experience in my work life, I am always the one who will ask the difficult question. I am always the one who will, to be in a group, I always talk. Look, even today, I am the one who's spoken up. But my question was really to communicate to the facilitator or the leader or the teacher, not to make people feel like me, that not to make me feel that it's bad that I'm the only one who has spoken up. I have had many detrimental situations where 20 people were in a room at a table, and I was the only person who spoke up for these important questions, but I was made to feel that it was my problem because the room was not courageous. So that was really my question. I'm sorry, it was long and it wasn't unclear, but I wanted to say, like, I'm not talking about the people who dominate, who like, oh, I got to tell you about my sister and they got married and blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about who go off the rails, that kind of thing. I'm talking about when you've got 100 people and I'm the only one who has the courage. And then I am put down in those. I've been fired. I worked gig work, but I've actually been set aside on a job because I actually spoke up. So I'm trying to say, how do you deal with not making that person feel bad because they're the only one who had the courage to actually speak up? That was really my question.
Yeah, a lot more nuanced. Yeah, that's a tough situation. I think the first thing I would say is, I mean, it sounds like a work culture issue at this organization that they're not open to answering those hard questions or to acknowledging those questions from the team. I think if you could encourage them to use tools like Slido, that might be a good option. Again, where people can ask questions either with their name or anonymously, and people upvote and downvote. And that way it's more of like a collaborative effort. We had an all hands or a virtual offsite recently. And there were some hard questions on there, but they were asked through Slido, and people, you could see upvoting the hard question. And so it was really like, okay, it's not just this one person asking, it's like, wow, a lot of the company is really curious about finding out more about this. So if there's a way that you can kind of suggest these additional tools, I think, yeah, that's the best answer I can think of right now.
I think that's super helpful because yes, and especially during, like I said in the beginning, we never know what people are going through. And we also know that there are a lot of organizations that are trying to be better at, practicing inclusivity and, let's say conflict resolution and these really, difficult things that really, ask us to communicate better as human beings. So if you have if you have the skill set to express yourself, but that doesn't match the skill set of the team. I love that, Lorraine is able to give tools that might allow for that integration to happen and where more people can be heard. So thank you for sharing that tool. All right, so we've got a little over 10 minutes left, everyone. So just want to let you know, in case you have any last minute questions or reflections, or you would also like to hop off mute, we've got a little over 10 minutes left. And Lorraine, I told you that time would fly as it normally does. So let's move on to the next.
Okay. How can we address webinar fatigue? That's also $1 million question. So this is something that I talk about a lot. I have a keynote presentation that I give about how to stand out on video. And actually in that keynote, I say that video fatigue is not really the issue at hand because we are all watching so much video outside of work. I know my number's like embarrassingly high, but the issue is really with the screen sharing and like not having our cameras on and just having the content there, or our face shrinking really small in the corner, or bulleted slides that are really poorly designed, or the presenter, sitting on a slide for 10 minutes without those state changes. So it's really about the way that people are presenting is not engaging enough. So I have a few suggestions for how to address this. So one is to use various tools out there that are helping to address this problem. The exciting thing right now is that there is so much technology being created to help meetings get better and to help with things like webinar and video fatigue. You'll see that I'm using Prezi Video for this chat right now. Hopefully it's more engaging than what you typically see. It doesn't take very long to create something like this. Movement is also key, and that's kind of related to the state changes. So I think I shared in my very first chat and learn with you, Mariella, video calls are a much harder medium to grab people's attention. So as much as you can keep flipping through your slides, maybe showing videos, using things even like a simple fade-in effect to keep people's focus, movement is really that what's going to give you that dopamine hit in the brain, and it engages you and it breaks you out of that autopilot mode that you have, just assuming once you get on a webinar, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be, so boring. So movement is key there. And, I'm not sure if this question, the person who asked this, if it's about specific people in the company, but, if you can target the people who are presenting at your company with the knowledge that they need to create great video presence, that's also key. So if you're watching a webinar and the person's in a dark room and the angle is weird, you're like looking up their chin, like all these different factors that, don't help your case at all. That is going to be really important too, to make sure they're equipped with the right knowledge.
Great feedback. Thank you for that. We've got a question here from Susan here that has written, this has been a great conversation. Thank you. Can you also provide some guidance around specifically hybrid meeting engagement? I know it's important to first ask those on screens to speak before those in the room, but is there any other guidance?
Yeah, so I would say that's definitely one. The other thing I would say, and I think this is becoming more of the accepted way to do things, is that if one person is virtual, everyone should be virtual. So even if you are in the same physical space, what I like to say is if you all want to be in one room, that's great, get in the room. but all have your laptops in front of you, and then just have the one speaker in the middle, so that the sound isn't, there's not a lot of feedback there. Another option is you're all in the office, but you go, take the call from your desk, separate offices, and that way it's really creating an equal playing field there. But to your point, yes, the remote people, we have proximity bias. So we're just wired to kind of address the people in the room first. So that's already great that you're thinking about the remote employees. And then, a lot of people say, okay, well, what's the point of going in person if I'm, just going to be on my laptop? But you do get that added element of social bonding. You can go out to lunch together, things like that. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, we're finding the balance. We're figuring out how to integrate. And I think that's a great proposal, at least temporarily, just so that I feel like there could be a link to empathy there. It's like, okay, you all are here in office for now. And, just to put your computer in front of people around you might seem like you're taking a step back, but maybe you can be like, okay, actually, I think this could be helpful. Maybe new ideas will come to the table just from having to be in that uncomfortable space of, okay, we're in person, but we're still having to be on video because half the other team or half the team is not in the physical space. So thank you for that. Marie writes, I love this Prezi tool you're using to be able to see the speaker and the content at the same time. Yes, I told you on the beginning, I love Prezi and I love it specifically for that reason as well. And I know that you actually want to get into some, Prezi perks that you want to share with us. I don't know if now's we've got about 8 minutes. And I do see more questions in the chat, but I would love to give you the dedicated time to go over that, Marie.
Sure, yeah, I'll share it and then we can go back into the questions again. So as a thank you for everyone who's here today, you can get a 1-month free Prezi Premium upgrade by filling out this link here. You just need to create a free Prezi account. There's also a free version, but create your account, fill out the form here with the email you use to sign up, and then you get 1 month free of premium. And there's a lot of really great benefits to that. You can record in high def, for example, and that's of course amazing for the async communication use case. You can use presenter notes. You can stream live like I'm doing now. So a lot of great benefits with premium. And then I wanted to share that I started a newsletter where you can subscribe and get more tips around video and virtual presenting, virtual and hybrid meetings, and then LinkedIn. As I mentioned, I used to work there. And all these tips are around basically how to boost engagement, productivity, and retention in our workplaces. And then for anyone who's interested, I actually started the course I mentioned earlier, Engage Your Virtual Workforce. So I'm taking applications until January 30th. So feel free to fill it out there if you're interested. And again, it covers video, virtual presenting, virtual and hybrid meetings, and then LinkedIn, again, all as it relates to engagement in the hybrid and virtual office.
I love this. And actually super timely because the last question in the chat was any recommended trainings and suggestions for different platforms. So can you actually dive in a little deeper on this course that you created? Like, why did you create it? What do you hope that people can take away from it? And just anything else you'd like to share?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've just been doing so much research and talking to so many people, the past few years about video. And as I mentioned, I do virtual keynotes now. And so I've just really been wanting to improve the skill and just learning so many things. And then meetings is something I've always been very passionate about because they're so key to business, but they're often so bad and such, they are not a good use of time. Things can slow down with bad meetings that aren't planned properly. And so I've been doing a lot of research for that as well. And then I had that opportunity to create the LinkedIn Learning course. And then LinkedIn, of course, I'm very passionate about that platform and how you can use content, use other aspects of the platform beyond just a job site. And so I had this opportunity to create a cohort-based course. And I was like, all these things really actually fit together quite well when it comes to our virtual and hybrid workforces. So I put it together and now I'm launching soon. So hopefully I would love for any of you to join.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the invitation. It looks like folks they're giving the thumbs up, the emojis up. So it looks like some folks might be taking you on there. And I just congratulate you because you do have a wealth of knowledge. You've been in the game for a while as far as, being one of the leading voices on how to do this right, and just to be, practicing inclusion and, emotional intelligence, even though you don't name it as that, some of your responses lead towards, things like empathy and self-awareness, which is all about emotional intelligence. So I really appreciate you, sharing this with us. So folks, she's not going to drop the link now in the chat. It's going to be in the rewatch email. And also maybe take a screen grab of what's happening now, or when you rewatch this, you can get that website there and just connect with Lorraine on LinkedIn. And let's see, we've got folks singing your praises here in the chat that this has been a great conversation. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks for attending.
Very informative. So we do have a couple minutes left, and I would love to give you all time back, because this is also what I love in meetings, when meetings actually end a little before time, and then you can take some time. You can maybe take some time to have a dance break, or just look at the sky, or maybe connect with some people who dropped their preferred ways of connecting in the chat. So I definitely encourage you all to, if you haven't already, I'll leave the Zoom open for a little while, but if you haven't already, drop your preferred way of connecting in the chat box, and then maybe reach out to a couple folks so that you can start to engage in some meaningful connections there. And I know we're not talking about LinkedIn right now, but because a lot of people do drop their LinkedIns here, and Lorraine, since you used to work for LinkedIn and you do use the tool, is there something that you can say now to just keep people inspired about LinkedIn and how to use it the right way?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. Well, I'll start off with something simple. So as you are all adding each other on LinkedIn, hopefully, and actually I should have put my LinkedIn on here as well, but you can all find me. Make sure that you are including a personalized message in your outreach, because a lot of people, if they get a connection request and there's no context, they are going to reject it. So just a simple thing like, oh, I saw you at the Power to Fly event about hybrid meetings, would love to connect. I think that's perfect.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone who has joined us live. Thank you for rewatching, Lorraine. I look forward to having you back. I'm excited to hear what your experience will be after sharing this course. I want to see some of those testimonials on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I fully support the work that you're doing, and I have no doubt that you'll be successful there. So you all definitely check out what Lorraine is offering here. Go ahead and take a screen grab, or be looking out for that rewatch email with links to resources. And I just want to say thank you, everyone. You have 2 minutes back in your day. Make sure you use it to your benefit. Maybe move your body a little bit more, or connect with folks that you just met here today. All right, Lorraine, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you soon.